Good morning again, everyone. So happy to see you. So today's reading is, as usual, from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyanandaji. And this comes from a tradition that Sri Yukteswarji and Babaji together created, which is the comparison of the scriptures in the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. And this is in the way of the yogi, not in terms of an organized religion. The title is The Promise of the Scriptures. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Bible, we read the famous parable of the prodigal son. Christ tells of the man... Oh, is that the wrong week?
I must have put it in the wrong spot.
Wrong week.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Otherwise
That's
you're
right. I should have known because we spoke about it this morning.
Otherwise, you hear the talk and say, now, how does that fit the reading?
Okay, here's another one. Reincarnation, the spiral staircase. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Bible, Christ tells us, "Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go out no more." There is a difference between church dogmas, which are based on reasoned deductions from scriptural statements, and the pronouncements of wisdom, which are based on the inner realization of scriptural truth. Reason, like a train, can only follow already existing tracks of human experience. Human memory, being short, is seldom able to cross back over the thresholds of a person's present existence. Biblical references to previous lifetimes on earth are overlooked in the deductive process, and we find them therefore excluded from the body of official dogma. Nevertheless, such references exist. In the same way, Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, silences Arjuna's reasonable doubts on the subject, not by reasoned argument, but by the frank statement contained in the 4th chapter of that great scripture. Arjuna, you and I have passed through many births. I know all of them, though you, O chastiser of foes, recall them not. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
And this is from, this is from Whispers from Eternity, but before that, I just want to echo what Dharmini had said, that it's just so nice to be back together. As we were saying this morning, we have had a whole season, really starting in September, of wonderful blessings from Jyotishji and Deviji, and it has, most of our satsangs were taken up with watching their satsangs, which makes perfect sense. And it was a time of inspiration in that way, and also because they were in different cities, our minds, our awareness was on these different cities, different centers, different parts of our spiritual family. And that's very important because we have to expand not just beyond CIT Nagar, but in fact beyond Chennai, beyond Tamil Nadu, to see all of India and in fact the world, because many people from all over the world were tuning in and watching their live broadcasts or the videos after. And now that they're back home safely in America, or back to their home in America, I should say, because they have homes here too, now it's a time of digesting and integrating all that we've received. And also, you could say, coming back to our own center, metaphorically and also literally coming back to our own center, and sharing in that inspiration and in that friendship with each other, with our spiritual family. And so both are needed, and it's a nice balance that way. Too much of one, then you need the other. Not saying that's what just happened, just saying in general, when there's too much of one, we find joy in the other. This is from Whispers from Eternity, a book of prayer poems by Paramahansa Yogananda. This one is entitled, Bless Me, that I may know that I am dreaming, even though my senses tell me I am awake. As we rest in sleep, wake in the morning to our daily round of desperate seeming but only half-conscious activity, then fall back to sleep again at night. So also do we pass fleetingly from birth to life to death again, waking ever and again in new bodies, dashing about our appointments and other commitments, delighting in them or groaning at their importunity, then finding ourselves forced to leave everything at death's next summons. Dream after dream of ceaseless earthly struggles. On the sleigh of incarnations we find ourselves sliding by hopes and disappointments, victories and failures, fulfillments and disillusionments. When the smooth snow of easy passage melts and the underlying ice of insecurity breaks, we find ourselves plunged into heaving seas, eddies of gay, then desperate laughter, sargassos of cloying involvements, vast calms of indifference, all only dreams. When at last I awoke in thee, I discovered that I'd been dreaming all along. I'd only thought I was awake. This subject of reincarnation is a very motivating one. That reading from Whispers, which was one I picked sort of at the last minute, and I mean how amazingly perfectly it fits the subject, and that as you could hear in the reading that Dharmini shared, it covers several important points, one of which is that the natural argument about reincarnation is if we lived lives before, shouldn't we remember them? If I did something before, I remember it. Now, is that true? I mean, how many times have you seen a photograph of yourself when you were young and say, is that me? Was I there? I don't remember this. You know, if you say that's never happened, just wait. Enough years go by, the head fills up more and more with stuff, and other stuff sort of gets crowded out. And so there are other times people will say, we had this, remember when we went there? No, I never went there. You did go there. No, show me the ticket stub. Need some proof. And then we find that our memory was wrong, that in fact we had done that thing. Try to remember what you had for breakfast last Monday. And you may say, well, gosh, that's easy. I have idli every morning. But, supposing it varies, then you just sort of, Monday? And the Monday, what was the date? This world has this dreamlike appearance, as Master said, the daily semi-conscious, activity that we have. But even so, the other simple answer is many people do remember their past lives. Not everyone, but many people. And you can make, those can be interesting anecdotes that, well, this is a counterexample to the fact that nobody remembers and things that can be verified. There's a wonderful story, which you might see just a quick YouTube video on it. I think there's one. It's called Soul Survivor, S-O-U-L. Soul Survivor, about a young boy who kept having nightmares of crashing as an airplane pilot. And then, in fact, his parents, who were sternly against any topic of reincarnation, their religion excluded it. But they couldn't find any other argument. I mean, he had these, and most of all, he had this terror, and they wanted to help him. And anyway, it's a wonderful story. But they were able to figure out where, when this happened, because he knew these details. He met the people who were still alive from that time, and he said, Mommy, they're so old. And because he remembered them when they were young. And another fascinating, he met someone who a lot of them he recognized right away, but one person he didn't until the man spoke. And then he said, oh, I know your voice. It was fascinating, especially again because everything was dead set against this being the explanation. So anyway, that was the story some time ago.
Though, what he turned out to be?
I don't know.
He was a World War II pilot that got shot down.
Sorry. He turned out to have been.
He met his fellow pilots.
So, interesting. I mean, important detail in the story. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So the The other thing, though, is sometimes even we, as we meditate, have inklings, perhaps, of past lives. We don't know for sure necessarily, but it sometimes feels like maybe this might be, and I'll come back to that. But the simple point, too, is that, well, some people believe in reincarnation, some people don't, meaning some religions teach it, some don't. And one example often held up is Christianity, that it doesn't teach it, but it does. This scripture reading that was given is a good example of that. The one Master quoted all the time is that his disciples asked him, but before the Savior comes, which is supposedly you, it said that Elijah will come, who was an old prophet, sort of like Ikshvaku, or some of the people you've heard of, who Krishna makes reference to, people from the olden days. And so he says, Jesus says, Elijah has come already, and people didn't recognize him. And it says the disciples understood he meant John the Baptist, who was his own guru. So anyway, these are a bunch of names. But the point is, if Jesus is saying this past soul came as John the Baptist now in this life, what else can it mean? I mean, there's no other explanation. Or if the disciples understood incorrectly, that, do you mean that reincarnation thing? And are you saying that like the soul reincarnated? Jesus would have said, no, I'm not saying that at all. But he didn't correct them. So obviously it's implied there. Another one, my favorite one, that's the famous one. My favorite one is where they often there's the parts of the story are a little bit like a daily log. Once Jesus came here, he did this, and it wasn't that amazing, and then they went on to the next thing, and so on. And so this story is that Jesus and his disciples came to a house where they met a man who had been blind since his birth. And the disciples asked Jesus, who sinned, his parents or this man, that he was born blind? And you have to think about that. His parents sinned and he was born blind. That's something you can easily say. In fact, people say here sometimes, not here, but generally, and it's a very unkind thing to say. But how could the man sin if he's born blind? I mean, before birth, was he inside his mother sort of thinking negative thoughts? Just like, oh yeah. And then he's born blind as punishment? I don't think so. That hardly seems fair. I mean, he's not even on the scene yet. So obviously it has to have meant that in some previous life he must have done something to be born that way, and so on. And that is the law of karma and reincarnation. But, we don't really have to argue the case. Is there a life after this life? There either is or there isn't. And Master makes the beautiful point in a talk he's given on reincarnation, which if you haven't heard it or heard it recently, you should listen to again. It's called One Life versus Reincarnation, where he approaches the subject. And in his, inimitable way, Master jumps right to the point, which is not sort of, well, is it this or is it that? And I don't know, and what do you think? And let's share our opinions about it. What's an opinion? It either is or it isn't. Master once said to Sri Yukteswar, I don't believe in astrology. And this is in the autobiography of a yogi. And Sri Yukteswar said, the only question or the only point is what is true, not what we believe. He said the law of gravity worked just as efficiently before Newton discovered it as after. The cosmos would be fairly chaotic if its laws could not operate without the sanction of human belief. And I read that for the first time and went, because so many people had told me the things that I believed were not true. But here it was. It only matters if it's true. I don't know if what I believe is true, but that's the only thing, is it true, not whether, because people were saying, no, they're not true because I don't believe them. And we must agree, and I don't like your disagreement. And that's that beautiful line from Swamiji's song that people shout, never mind if men are wrong, so long as they agree. But it does matter. The truth does matter. So, Master jumps right to the point and says whether there is one life or multiple lives, the point is, suppose there's only one life. If there's multiple lives, you have consequences of your actions. You can't really get away with it. If there's only one life, you can say, No consequences. I can do whatever I want and I won't have to come back and pay the bill. But he said, life gives you those consequences. He said, as soon as you hit people, they will all hit you back. And so you learn immediately that you'd better live a good life, because even in this life, forgetting the next life, there's logical, natural consequences. And so live a good life, whether there's one life or multiple lives. But then he brings out the point that without the understanding of reincarnation, life just doesn't make any sense. And it's just not fair at all. Because this man was born blind. Suppose he didn't have a previous life. Why should he be born blind? This is the question always posed to religion, in fact. If God is kind, why does he allow children to suffer? Why does he allow people to be born, with some advantage and other people born with no advantage and all of that? And it's all true. Without reincarnation, Master says, it just doesn't make sense. And it's completely unfair. In fact, it's funny to me because one of the philosophers who's often quoted by atheists is a man named David Hume. And he was I don't know that he was an atheist, but he had a good argument against, we can only believe what we can experience. Sorry, his argument was for, you can only believe what you can experience. And he himself said, reincarnation is the only system to which philosophy can hearken, to listen. Because otherwise nothing makes any sense. It's just random. And if it's just random, why should there be any meaning in it? Which is in fact a false conclusion that one can draw from one's own experience. You can't argue. And there's no point in arguing. I myself didn't believe in reincarnation at all when I came to the spiritual path. Maybe that's why I hadn't yet come to the spiritual path. Those were the dark days. But when I came to the spiritual path, which for me was reading Autobiography of a Yogi after meeting someone from Ananda and being impressed with his poise and centeredness and saying, I want that because I don't have that. I had shaking leg and restlessness, and what's next? That was what I had, and he had a centeredness. So I read Autobiography of a Yogi, and the way Master just explains his own experiences, I didn't know if I could believe his experiences, all of them, including past life memories, but I also couldn't believe that he would lie. He was just so obviously sincere and truthful. And more than that, I could feel, I think, his vibrations, as he told Swamiji. He put his vibrations in that book. But also I think I could feel my own perhaps, deeper than conscious memories that, yes, I think this is true, actually. And that's a good argument for reincarnation for each of us. Because we are attracted to certain things. We are drawn to certain things. For example, the spiritual path. I have a lot of problems, we can say, in my life. Everybody does. Swamiji would say, I've got problems, you've got problems, all God's children got problems. Everybody has some problem, but to us, the thought has occurred, hey, meditation and God might be a good solution to my problem. Why? Why is that what occurs to you? You see, a lot of our likings, our inclinations, our recognition, yes, that makes sense. We can't explain why it makes sense. It makes sense. Well, if you think it makes sense to everyone, just try discussing it with someone else. You quickly find, I think I'll find others to share my enthusiasm with. I had that experience too. My first person recommending Autobiography of a Yogi. This is the answer we have all been looking for. He said, not me. And no thanks. And I said, I thought I hadn't explained it clearly enough. Don't try. I practically bludgeoned him over the head with the book, trying to get it into his mind, and it failed. So we quickly find that people may say, for example, of the spiritual path, I'm not interested. And we say, well, I am interested. But why are you interested? See, you can't explain. I just am. We can come up with reasons, well, because I found that it works. Why does it work? Other people may try it, this, for example, these meditation techniques, and they may not work for them because they have another spiritual family, or whatever it is. You see, there's always a good answer. There's always a happy ending for everyone. It's not a question of this or that or whatever. But Why do you feel, some people see Master's face and instantly recognize it or find it attractive? Why? Well, it is a beautiful face, but some people just pass it by, not even noticing. That is a connection between you and Master, and a connection between you and God that you've been cultivating for a long time. It's the only, to me, logical explanation of what allows some people to really stick on the path and other people to still be in the process. And that's just one example, the spiritual path. What about your profession? Swamiji said, if you're looking for your ideal profession, think back to your childhood and think about those things you were naturally inclined to. Because in the first years of life, he said, till about age 6, we sort of have these, you could say the inclinations from past lives are stronger, because we have that one child told his parents, I remember last time when I was the dad and you were the kids, so I don't want to hear it. I mean, he was just that adamant about it. And I, knowing the kid, I believe him. But they also said, guess what? We pay the rent, we put the food on the table, we have the money, so you better listen. No, they didn't say that. But the thing is, he learned in time, he better listen to his parents, because they make good points. So the thing then to remember is, it's true or it's not true. If we feel it's true, we don't have to sort of be passionate in our defense of it. I mean, when's the last time you really argued for gravity? Like Sri Yukteswar says, I believe in gravity, you can't say there isn't gravity. And someone says, no, there's no gravity. Oh, please, please believe. Your lack of belief threatens me. It just is. Two people arguing about is there a life after another, after death, is sort of like two twins, unborn twins, arguing if there's a life after birth. You see, there just is. But it doesn't matter if one says, yes, I don't think there's anything after this, and the other one says, I think there is. They're going to find out. We're all going to find out. So reincarnation can be very motivating. Just as Master's poem said, life after life, this trouble, that trouble. In fact, that was Master's answer to the question, why don't we remember? He said, there's enough bad things in this life that you don't want to remember all the bad things in the life before and the life before that. And he said, furthermore, suppose you died of cancer in the last life, and then in this life you have some bruise on your hand, you might think the cancer is coming back. And think about that. Sometimes if you've had a past trauma, and then then later something else, meaning now, something happens that reminds you of that or makes you think it's going to happen again. You feel your heart rate going up, or just, oh my gosh, I thought that was over. I mean, it's just immediate if it was a hard enough thing to go through and we haven't quite cleared it. And so what about the past life? My God, how many things, how many lives have ended that way? I had that thought too once. Someone was trying to argue with me about healing. You need to do these things to heal your body and so on. And I was resisting the person for some reason, just like, I don't think so. Well, maybe. I'll see. I'll see if I feel like it. And then I thought, but this was basically a medical practitioner of a sort. And I wondered, why am I resisting this person? And I realized the thought that I had in the back of my mind was, you don't always get better. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get sick and that's it. And I thought, what a ridiculous thought to have. Has that happened to me? Obviously not. Here I am still. So I thought, I wonder if in some past life I died from disease and kind of was bitter about it or something. You don't know. And it doesn't much matter, because what matters is our activities and our actions in this life. But, as I said, anything that can motivate us to do better is worthwhile. Whether it's literally true or not doesn't matter. I was a school teacher, and there was a mother who was very protective of her kids in terms of driving in a car. She said, I'm the only one who can drive them, and any other parent and any other teacher can never drive them. And she had them in car seats, even though they were like 9 years old, way too old for a car seat. She was always, very protective. They had hats, sunglasses, sunscreen, even though they were, very pale, all these things. And then she said to me, you can drive them because I trust you. It's like, have you watched me drive? Have you seen how I drive? I didn't drive badly, but there was no basis for that. It was just like looking at you, I can tell you're a good driver, and they all aren't. And I was sort of offended by the whole thing. And I did drive them, and they're still alive, and all that. But I was getting more and more irritated with her, and I realized that, as a teacher of her kids, I can't afford to be irritated with her every time she says something. Yeah, it's not a healthy attitude when you have to work with someone, basically, a parent. Plus, I understand that the feelings between parents or children are not always, shall we say, logical. I even could quote my own experience in that. So I thought, how can I get out of this mood? How can I get out of this sort of irritation with her? And I wondered, I was meditating on it, and I just wondered, what if in her last life she had somehow turned her back for a moment and lost her children? Then wouldn't I feel total compassion for her now? It would make sense why she was so careful. And so I just decided that was what had happened, and it completely relaxed my heart. Is it true? Who knows? Who cares? The point was the outcome. Was that I needed to get, I had to be more compassionate and more charitable to her. And so we find all kinds of sort of past life things perhaps leaking into our lives. Sometimes we find an attraction to a person when you first meet them. I mean that we sort of go, oh, you seem interesting. You seem like you could be my new friend. Wow, I feel there's some kind of connection or some kind of energy. And eventually we discover, oh, that's because were we friends in a past life? No, we were enemies. Ah, yes. I remember now. Okay. Pakalam. And it's funny. The first time it happens, it's a shock because there's all this energy. Where do I know you from? I feel like I know you. Oh, that's right. I remember your face is the last one I saw. So we learn, for example, then when we meet someone new and we feel sort of there's energy here, we pause and say, what kind of energy? What kind of connection did we have? Not that we're guarded, but that we stay centered. It's always helpful to stay centered. And just let's wait and see. And otherwise, you find out the hard way. On the other hand, as I said, we want to be aware maybe this is a friend. God sends us past friends from past lives. In fact, Master said, if you have a good friendship with someone, and in your life you may have very few good, long-lasting, trusting friendships, meaning you may be friendly with many people, but as Swamiji has said, you have many friends perhaps that you can laugh with, but how many friends can you cry with? How many friends will listen to your tears, and how many friends will be open enough to share their griefs with you too, instead of not just in a competition? Your grief is nothing. Let me tell you about my grief. When I was growing up, Mom had one leg and Dad had no face, and the dog, so there's sort of a sad competition who can have a sadder life. So Master said, if you have a close friendship with someone, it can only be because you two have worked on that for many incarnations. He said the only way you can have an openness and a trust with someone, is because you've been working at it a long time. He said it takes a long time. So you can appreciate that perhaps in your friends that you do have, close friends, that, wow, maybe it's true. And again, why should we have this compatibility when you don't always find that? In fact, you rarely find that. There are certain things I can talk with this friend and certain things I have to just keep to myself. And that's okay. That's appropriate. But it's nice when we don't have to always keep everything to ourselves, especially the things we care the most about. That's part of what the spiritual family is for, and partly why it feels like a spiritual family, because we are actually part of the same family, of Master's family, and very likely have been with him and also have been together for many lifetimes. Swamiji said that repeatedly. He said, it's not that I can say the life I had with each of you or necessarily with all of you, but I do feel that we must have done this before in past lives and so on. And that's not just limited in time to that particular crowd he was addressing. So another way that that reincarnation can help us is if we get a little too excited about something in this life, we can remember, well, that's good, meaning when we get overly excited. It's always good to have enthusiasm, joy, appreciate the gifts and the good experiences God has given us. But as Master said, look to the giver behind each gift. When something wonderful works out, say, thank you, Master, thank you, Divine Mother, and feel, in the case of Divine Mother, her love for you in that she's sharing this thing. Because that's really what it comes down to. If you give someone a gift and they say, great, just what I wanted, bye, you feel kind of cheapened because the gift is an expression of love. And so again, that's how Divine Mother is. She's giving us her love behind every gift. Every pleasant gift. Or who did the bad gifts come from? Well, actually, the bad gifts also come from Divine Mother, and they're not always bad. We have to understand. It's not the experience, it's what I gained from the experience. It's not what happened, it's the outcome. Sometimes the unhappiest experiences of our lives are what motivate us to seek God. They motivate us to seek the truth. They motivate us to say, okay, I felt jarred by this experience. I felt knocked off my center. What can I do to become stronger in myself? As Master said, you must stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. And when's the last time you were in the crash of a breaking world? I mean, the world is still here, and it might be a little sort of tense, but it hasn't broken yet. So, and I'm on the same planet as you, I think. And so none of us have lived through the crash of a breaking world. We have this little thing that, the payment didn't go through. It feels like the crash of a breaking world, and it's not. And so we say, how can I be stronger in myself? You could say even the whole point of the spiritual path is to make you stronger in yourself. Especially once we realize that our strength doesn't just come from us, but it comes from God. It comes from God through Master also. As Master's most advanced disciple said when Master said to him, never forget where your power comes from, because he was very powerful in the world as a businessman. The disciple was. And so Master said, never forget where your power comes from. And the man said, I won't, Master, it comes from you. And so we feel that more and more when we tune into the source of true power, that it's wonderful, that we get warnings even. Intuition tells us, no, don't go in that direction, or do go in that direction, and more we're guided that way. And it's motivating because we want to get out. We don't want to, what's one motivation for getting it together in this life? Otherwise, 12th standard exams. Again. And maybe by then there'll also be 11th standard exams and 13th standard exams. You never know at the rate we're going. There'll be an exam a national exam every year, starting with LKG. Green or blue, go. It's ridiculous, the amount of testing that children have to go through. And do you want that again? And don't forget, we forget the negative experiences, but we also arrive in this life trying to figure out how to pick up where we left off. Where is this spiritual path? I know there's God somewhere. Let's see, is it Priya Yoga? Is it Diya Yoga? There's some kind of yoga I want. And who knows, we may find it at the end of life even. And that's okay if that's what happened. But nice to get started early on and not go through all this confusion. Everybody feels that way, that, my whole life before this, if only I had known the spiritual path. I felt that, I had wasted my whole life before coming onto the path. For me, I came on at the age of 20. And I thought, all those decades, 2 decades of wasted experience. But it's always that feeling that, let's get back to work. And so if it has to happen, it has to happen, but it doesn't have to happen. That's the thing. That's in fact the answer to all of this, if you're wondering, is find God. And how is that? Well, in your case, Kriya Yoga. Why? Because, in fact, reincarnation may seem like a merciful thing. I grew up thinking there was one life, that there was injustice in the world, and that also if you messed things up, you died and went to hell or something. I wasn't sure about the hell part, but it just seemed like you get one chance, that's it. It doesn't seem fair. So when I learned of reincarnation, I thought, oh, how compassionate, how kind Divine Mother is. You get lots of chances. That seems reasonable. I mean, even in life, we make a mistake, and then we get another chance to do it better. Maybe not with the same person, maybe not in the same job, maybe not in the same situation, but we remember, I spoke before I thought, and I didn't like the outcome, and neither did the other person. So maybe next time I can, let me think about that. We learn, we get many opportunities in this life, so why wouldn't we get even multiple lives of opportunities? So I was quite shocked when I read that Master said reincarnation was created by Maya. Reincarnation was created by the devil. And I just thought, what? No, but second chances. And he said, Maya plants in our minds desires for things that bring us back. And Maya plants in our minds the thought, even at the end of life, oh, this life hadn't worked out, but if only I had done this, then it would have worked out. And then we come back the next life trying to achieve that. And it's the way we get hooked again and again, and it's fascinating to think about. Because the point is, it wasn't that there was an unmerciful God one day, and then I realized God was actually merciful. God's been merciful the whole time. How do we know? God is trying to get us out of the cycle. You see, Master is trying to get us out of the cycle. Master writes, reincarnation sends immortal souls away from their kingdom of omnipresence to the disease, accident, and misery-infested little bodily jail. Master's always so restrained in his speech. But just as some criminals get so used to a jail that they hate to leave it at the end of their term, so also omnipresent souls become so attached that they hate to leave the bodily jail, even when their term of life expires. Reincarnation is good when free souls like Jesus, Krishna, and our great Guru Preceptor Babaji can visit the earthly prison to parole other soul prisoners and bring them back to their kingdom of unending happiness. So the whole time we're sitting in the prison and Master's saying, look, your parole request was granted. You cleared the hearing. You're free to go. And we say, no, go where? Where would I go? It's kind of nice here. I get food. I don't have to work. The bars are a little thick, but that's okay. I'm used to them. And I'm used to being small, you see. But after a certain number of lifetimes of this, I won't say how many, we start to get motivated. And something in our heart says there's got to be more than this. And like I said, reincarnation can be very helpful for even evaluating our own thoughts. The other day I collected the ironing from the iron shop, and I sort of felt a sense of satisfaction. I don't know why I hadn't ironed it, but just sort of, now the clothes are ironed, and I've got them, and I can put them out, and then they can be ready. And then I sort of followed the thought to its natural conclusion. They can be ready, so they can be used, and then they can be washed, and then they can go back to the iron shop again. And I started thinking, how much of my lifetime is just filled with going to the iron shop, dropping, or have the clothes come back, picking up the iron. It's really all just about ironing the clothes. Some lifetimes you're going to the iron shop. Some lifetimes you're working in the iron shop, ironing the clothes. How many thousands of lifetimes can just be viewed as whether you are the one giving the ironing or the one doing the ironing. I thought, you know what, forget it. I want out of this world. Anything, you realize it's just a thing we're going through. Now, in case you're wondering, does that mean all of life's experiences are meaningless? Obviously not. We're meant to learn from them. But again, like prisoners in the jail, the only thing we're meant to learn most is to escape. And even when we escape, which is to say, to escape the prison not only of the body, but of the ego. Because it's really the ego that we have to escape. When we do, we still come back. As he said, it's good when good souls come back to help the others. And as I was saying not too long ago, if you've ever had the chance to visit your old school, where you used to go to school, If you've ever visited it when it's open and you see the children scurrying around and you think, ha, have a good time. And the bell rings and then everything has to change. The bell does not ring for me. I am outside the system. So it is the same. You are free from the jail. Even if you visit the jail, nobody can touch you, and you can rather help people. And in fact, because you know what they're going through. That's a useful thing for anything. You don't have to wait for liberation. When you've suffered enough in one way, it makes you very able to help others who have suffered in that way. Whether it's the same exact life experience, tragedy, or whether it's just that feeling of tragedy. Because often when somebody's really hurt, and if you want to say something to them, they'll say, have you experienced what I did? And if the other person says no, then I don't want to hear it. You don't have a right to say anything. But if the other person says, yes, I have. Okay, so we find ourselves open, partly because it reminds us, oh, I'm not the only one. Feels like I'm the only one, but I'm not. So let us work on, as I said, our Kriya. Because Kriya Yoga and meditation generally helps us most effectively to escape the ego. To get out of reincarnation, you do not have to overcome all karma. That would be impossible. Because we're generating new karma all the time. Even good karma is still karma. But we have to get rid of the ego, which is that which is generating the new karma. When we overcome that, then by feeling ourselves more connected to other people, more connected to God, most of all, expanding just beyond me, then we find that we can't create new karma, and then that's the state of a jivan mukta. That means you're one with God. There's still old karma to be cleared out. Fine. You can pay those old debts later. It doesn't matter. As a free soul, you can work out your karma. In fact, Swamiji asked Master the logical question, but if you're one with God, can't you just say, I see all these past lives also, and I banish them with my omnipotent power? And Master said, you could, but at that point, most people don't care. You're already one with God, you know that. And he said, and they use their old karma as an excuse to come back to help others. In fact, to help their own disciples to be liberated in that way. So you can see, even if that's what God asks the saints to do, or not the saints even, because saint can mean many things, but those who are one with God to do, to help others. So even we in our life, we should help others. Sometimes you can help someone through a word. Sometimes you can help them through giving them autobiography of a yogi. Sometimes you can't do anything outwardly. You can always give them food. That seems to work. But besides that, we can always pray. We can always send prayers. Divine Mother, help this person in the way that you know is the way to help them. If you know Kriya, you can even do Kriya for a person. If you have another meditation technique on this path or some other path, you can say, I dedicate a sort of a period of my meditation to help this other person. Don't feel that you are the one, I am doing this for you, okay? No. Just God knows how the mechanism works. I don't understand it. And don't dedicate your whole meditation to somebody, because it can seem, we can get the wrong sense that I am being the healer, and that's not a helpful thought, and it's not even true. But let us feel that I will do my meditation, I will love God, I will mix with others who love God in order to escape this life, this life prison jail in this lifetime. God bless you.